Pokemon Unite is leaving the World Championships. For a lot of players, that announcement feels less like news and more like a warning. For years, Worlds was the biggest stage our game had. It was proof that Unite belonged alongside the rest of Pokemon's competitive titles. However, suddenly seeing that support disappear naturally leads to one question. What happens now? Some people believe this is going to be the beginning of the end. Some believe Teamy stopped caring years ago. Some believe the game is already dead and we're simply waiting for the official announcement. Personally, I don't think any of those things are true. I think Unite is a game caught between several different audiences, several different goals, and several different companies trying to push it in different directions. And somewhere along the way, players and developers stopped understanding each other. Today, I want to talk about how we got here, why I don't believe Unite is dying, and why I think the future of this game depends just as much on us as it does the people making it. Because despite everything that has happened over the last 5 years, I still believe Pokemon Unite has a future worth fighting for. The first thing we need to understand is why this announcement hit people so hard. Even if you never planned on competing professionally, Worlds mattered. Competitive scenes give games something to aspire toward. They create moments, stories, rivalries. They give players a reason to improve. When players saw teams standing on that stage, they could imagine themselves there one day. Removing Unite from Worlds doesn't instantly kill the game, but it does remove one of the biggest symbols of its future. That's why people are worried. And honestly, I understand why. So, how did we get here? Obviously, I don't work for Teamy or the Pokemon Company, so everything I'm about to say is speculation based on what we've seen over the years. You see, I believe Unite has been pulled in two completely different directions. On one side, you have competitive players who want balance changes, better matchmaking, draft improvements, more communication, and generally a stronger esports scene. On the other side, you have casual players who log on after work or school, players who play with friends, players who just want to use their favorite Pokemon and have fun for a few matches. The problem is that these groups often want completely different things, and trying to satisfy both groups at the same time is incredibly difficult, especially for a game attached to the Pokemon brand. I also think MOBAs create a type of frustration that very few genres can match. In a single player game, if you lose, you usually know why. For example, I've been playing Pokemon Champions. If my strategy fails, that's on me. I made the decisions, I built a team, I can look at my mistakes and improve. In Unite, things feel different. You have teammates, objectives, team compositions, random factors outside your control. You can play well for 8 minutes and still lose a game because of one fight. You can do almost everything right and still watch the defeat screen appear. That frustration is real. But I think sometimes that frustration causes us to look outward before we look inward. We blame matchmaking, we blame teammates, we blame the system. Sometimes those things deserve blame, but sometimes there are lessons hidden behind those losses that we're too frustrated to see. The best players in Unite still consistently reach the top. The best teams still consistently qualify. Skill matters more than people give it credit for. Not because the game is perfect, not because matchmaking is perfect, but because improvement still works. And that's important to remember. Now, let's talk about Teamy. One of the biggest statements I see online is that developers don't care. Maybe they're disconnected. Maybe communication could be better. Maybe priorities haven't lined up with what players wanted. Those are all fair criticisms. However, I don't think it's accurate to say that nobody cares. The reality is probably much more complicated. Teamy develops Pokemon Unite. The Pokemon Company owns Pokemon brand. There are business decisions, branding decisions, regional decisions, and competitive decisions all happening at once. When you're working with one of the biggest media franchises in the world, things don't move quickly. And while that doesn't excuse bad decisions, it does make me hesitant to assume that every unpopular change comes from malice or indifference. Companies make mistakes. They make wrong bets. Sometimes they're simply trying to solve problems with fewer resources than they had before. And honestly, that explanation feels more believable to me. Because if Unite were truly preparing to disappear, I don't think we'd still be seeing the changes we are today. We've received free licenses and holowear through events. We've continued receiving balance patches and system updates. And even recently, we saw changes to the move customization. Now, I want to be clear here. I hate being locked into a single moveset once the match starts. I truly understand why so many players are frustrated by that change. It's one of the few recent decisions that I think almost everyone in the community agrees that feels worse than what we had before. However, instead of asking, why would they make this change? I've been asking a different question. What made them feel like they had to? Because if reverting it were as simple as pressing a button, I honestly believe they would have done it already. Instead, what we've seen is something much smaller. They've added a reminder screen before matches so players can quickly check and change their moveset before the game begins. That, however, does not solve the underlying issue, and I don't think anyone would argue that it does. It does, however, tell me they're at least aware of what's happening. Whether it's technical limitations, development priorities, or something happening behind the scenes, I think there's probably something more to this decision that we've been able to see from the outside. That doesn't mean players should stop criticizing it. I really hope they continue to. However, I don't think we're watching Pokemon Unite die. I think we're watching Unite simply become a smaller game. Why? Because this connects to my next point. The negativity surrounding this game. Criticism is important. Criticism helps games improve. Players should absolutely speak up when something feels wrong. However, there is a difference between criticism and hopelessness. When every update is treated as proof that the game is dying, eventually people stop wanting to join the community at all. New players leave, creators leave, competitive players leave, and eventually that negativity becomes its own self-fulfilling prophecy. The game doesn't die because of one bad patch, the game dies because everyone decides it already has. I don't think Pokemon was fully prepared for what comes with running a MOBA community, because unlike traditional Pokemon games, Unite gives players something easy to point towards when something goes wrong. Teammates, matchmaking, randomness, and while those things absolutely exist, I don't think it's healthy for if they become the answer to every loss. Improvement starts with accountability, not because you're always the problem, but because you're the only thing you can control. That mindset helped me improve as a player, and honestly, I think it helps in almost every competitive game. As for me, I spent the last 5 years chasing one goal. I wanted to become a player that people recognize, a player that people could rely on, one that could stand on stage with the best. And while I still want those things, somewhere along the way, I realized I wanted something else too. I wanted to help all of you. I wanted to help players improve, I wanted to explain mechanics that never got talked about. I want to teach interactions that new players don't know exist, because I believe Unite has a future, then I should be willing to invest in that future myself, which is why I'm here with you all today. My team and I are still going to fight for every regional tournament we enter, we're still going to compete, and hopefully we'll have opportunity to speak for players who care deeply about where this game goes next. You know, like in the upcoming tournament in Japan, like I really want to go there. But this time, it's not just for us, it's for everyone else too. I'm truly speaking from my heart here. I'm not referencing off anything, I am just gonna think about the first thing I'm gonna say in my head. I'm gonna stutter, it's fine. But I truly hope, if I make it to Japan, I could be on stage and talk about problems in the game and truly express what everybody wants. I want to get to know this community. I want to show that we all still care about this game's success no matter what. People who would be watching in America, I hope, or TV, I hope they get to see some live broadcast message, and I hope in this upcoming World Championship some top players speak up there too. I don't think it's gonna happen, but if it does, I would probably mean something to everybody in the community and the players running, or the developers running this game. Sorry. Anyways, yeah, back to my script. Anyways, where does that leave us? I don't think Unite is in the best state it's ever been. I don't think everything is fine. I don't think players should stop giving feedback. But I also don't think this is the end. Not yet. There are people still working on this game. There are creators still making content, such as myself. There are still players queuing every day. There are still teams competing. There are people who still care. And as long as people care to fight for a game's future, that future still exists. Thank you. If you made it to the end of the video, please feel free to subscribe, like, comment, you know, all that YouTube stuff, and hopefully that helps spread the word further, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!